The alarm blared at 3:15 in the morning, the third time that week. I bolted upright, heart hammering, already reaching for my phone to call 911 about the chemical leak at the plant. Then I heard it through my bedroom window. Laughter. My manager's laughter, carrying across the parking lot from the factory floor, just messing with the new systems. His voice echoed. That's when I realized the emergency wasn't real, but the danger absolutely was. And I had the proof sitting in my desk drawer. Sleep was impossible after that. I lay there in the dark, staring at my ceiling, listening to my heart gradually slow back to a normal rhythm. My apartment was only 2 blocks from Chemtech Industries, which had seemed convenient when I moved in 4 years ago. Now it felt like living next to a ticking time bomb. At 6:30, I gave up on sleep entirely. I showered, dressed in my usual work clothes, and drove to the plant 90 minutes before my shift started. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars belonging to the skeleton night crew. The building loomed against the gray dawn sky, all concrete and steel and small windows. 300 people worked here, manufacturing industrial equipment and chemical processing machinery. It was a good job. At least, it used to be. I let myself in through the main entrance, waved at the security guard, and headed straight to my office on the 2nd floor. Quality Control Specialist, my door placard read. I'd earned that title 2 years ago after working my way up from a floor technician position. At 28 years old, I was proud of what I'd accomplished. I was responsible for safety documentation, quality audits, and making sure our products and processes met industry standards. It was detail-oriented work that required precision and integrity. 2 things I thought mattered here. I unlocked my desk drawer and pulled out a black composition notebook, not a company-issued logbook, my personal record. I'd started keeping it 3 weeks ago when the false alarms began. The first entry was dated September 15th, 12:45 in the afternoon, middle of the lunch shift. The emergency chemical leak alarm had screamed through the facility without warning. 300 workers had evacuated in controlled panic, following the procedures we'd drilled dozens of times. Except there was no leak, no chemical exposure, no emergency at all. Sarah Martinez from the packaging line had twisted her ankle badly, rushing down the stairs. I'd helped her to the parking lot, watched the EMTs wrap her swelling joint. She'd been on crutches for a week afterward. I flipped to the second entry, September 22nd, 2:17 in the morning, during night shift. Same alarm, same chaos. This time, a forklift operator named Tommy had swerved when the alarm went off, nearly crashing into a support column. He'd missed it by inches. The property damage would have been significant. The injury to Tommy could have been catastrophic. And now, just hours ago, the third incident. I added a new entry, my handwriting tight and precise. September 29th, 3:15 a.m. False alarm, chemical leak system. Duration approximately 12 minutes before deactivation. Residential area affected. Workers living nearby disturbed. Manager Derek Paulson, observed on premises, heard laughing and stating he was testing systems. Derek Paulson, 42 years old, been with Chemtech for 12 years, recently promoted to operations manager. He had a reputation as someone who got things done, cut through red tape, improved efficiency. Upper management loved him. I was starting to understand why that terrified me. The previous morning, after the second false alarm, I'd gone directly to Derek's office. Professional, calm. I'd expressed my concerns about the unauthorized alarm tests, the injuries, the panic they were causing. I'd suggested he coordinate with the safety department, notify workers in advance, follow proper protocols. He'd leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, and smiled at me, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let me explain something to you, Alida," he'd said. "I'm conducting an important analysis of worker response times and evacuation efficiency. These tests are revealing some very interesting data about how our employees handle emergency situations." I'd tried to stay professional, but people are getting hurt. Sarah's ankle, Tommy almost crashed. He'd waved a dismissive hand. Minor incidents, acceptable losses for the valuable data we're collecting. You see, I'm building a case that our workers are, how should I put this, overly sensitive to safety protocols. They panic too easily, overreact, and that tells me we're spending too much money on safety measures that create more problems than they solve. I'd felt ice sliding down my spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the safety department budget is bloated. We have too many safety positions, too many redundant protocols, too much hand-holding. My analysis is going to prove that to upper management. We can cut 40% of the safety budget and actually improve efficiency." His eyes had fixed on me. "Positions like yours, for instance. Quality control specialist. Do we really need that? Or is it just bureaucratic padding? You're trying to eliminate safety jobs by proving workers are too cautious about safety?" I'd heard the disbelief in my own voice. He'd stood up then, walked around his desk to stand too close to me. "I'm proving that we've created a culture of fear and overreaction. And if you're smart, you'll keep your concerns to yourself. Because I'm documenting everything, Alida. Every panicked evacuation. Every worker who treats a simple alarm test like the end of the world. And when I present my findings to the COO, people are going to see things my way." He'd paused. "Unless you want to make trouble. In which case, guess whose position gets cut first?" The memory made my hands shake as I sat at my desk. I forced myself to breathe slowly. That's when he'd said it. The words I'd written in my log, underlined twice. "It's just a prank. So what? Besides, who's going to believe you over me?" I closed the notebook and sat in the quiet office as sunrise gradually lit the windows. Workers would start arriving in an hour. Another day of pretending everything was normal, while Derek Paulson systematically undermined every safety measure that kept people alive. But I had documentation, dates, times, witnesses. Derek thought he was untouchable. He had no idea I'd already started building a case of my own. By Tuesday morning, I'd made my decision. I couldn't go back to Derek. I needed to escalate this through proper channels. That meant human resources. Patricia Hall's office was on the first floor, a corner space with slightly better furniture than the rest of us got. She'd been the HR director for 20 years, a fixture at Chemtech. 50-something years old, always professionally dressed, with a reputation for being firm but fair. If anyone could intervene, it would be Patricia. I knocked on her door at 9 o'clock sharp, my black notebook tucked under my arm. "Come in," her voice called. She looked up from her computer as I entered, her expression neutral and professional. "Alida, what can I do for you?" "I need to report a serious safety concern." I sat down in the chair across from her desk without waiting for an invitation. My hands were steadier than I'd expected. "It's about Derek Paulson and the emergency alarm system." Her fingers steepled together. "I'm listening." I walked her through everything. The 3 false alarms, the injuries, the disruption. Derek's admission that he was conducting unauthorized tests. His stated goal of proving workers overreact to safety measures so he could justify cutting the safety budget. His threat against my job if I reported him. Patricia took notes on a yellow legal pad, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she set down her pen. "This is concerning," she said. "Do you have documentation?" I slid the notebook across her desk. "Everything's recorded here. Dates, times, witness names, details of each incident." She flipped through it, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Aleda. I take all safety concerns seriously. I'll need to investigate this thoroughly before I can take any action. Give me a few days to interview witnesses and review the facts." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. I just want to make sure people are safe." "Of course. That's what we all want." She smiled, and it seemed genuine. "I'll be in touch soon." I walked out of her office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I'd done the right thing, gone through proper channels. Patricia would investigate, and Derek would have to answer for his actions. The system was working. 2 days passed, then 3. I didn't hear anything from Patricia. I sent her a polite email asking for an update. She responded that the investigation was ongoing. On Friday, 5 days after our initial meeting, Patricia called me into her office. When I arrived, my stomach dropped. Derek was already there, sitting in the chair I'd occupied earlier that week. He smiled at me. That same cold smile. "Aleda, thank you for joining us." Patricia gestured to the empty chair. "Please, sit down." I sat, my heart hammering. This felt wrong. "I've completed my investigation into your concerns about Derek's alarm system testing," Patricia began. She had a file folder open in front of her. "I've reviewed the evidence and interviewed several people, and," I tried to keep my voice steady, "I've found that your allegations are unfounded. Derek has been conducting authorized efficiency testing with full knowledge and approval from upper management. The testing protocols have been within acceptable parameters." "That's not true." I looked at Derek. He laughed about it. He admitted he's trying to cut safety positions. Derek leaned forward, his expression concerned and slightly hurt. "Aleda, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I've been working on a comprehensive efficiency analysis. Yes, but I never said anything about cutting your position or undermining safety. I'm concerned that you may have misinterpreted our conversation. You threatened me. You said I'd be the first position cut if I made trouble." Patricia held up a hand. "Aleda, I understand you're upset, but I need to show you something." She opened the file folder and turned it toward me. "These are recent quality control reports you've submitted. I found several concerning errors." I stared at the papers. They were my reports, my signature at the bottom. But the data was wrong. Numbers didn't match what I remembered. Dates were off. Calculations were incorrect in ways that made the facility look less safe than it actually was. "I didn't write these errors," I said slowly. "Someone altered these documents." "That's a serious accusation," Patricia said, her voice hardening. "Derek brought these discrepancies to my attention. He's concerned about your work performance and your judgment. Frankly, Aleda, this pattern of mistakes, combined with baseless accusations against a manager, suggests you may be struggling in your role." "This is retaliation," I said. "He's setting me up because I reported him." Derek shook his head sadly. "Aleda, I really think you need to take some time and reflect on your performance. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to help you improve." Patricia slid a document across the desk. "This is a formal written warning for poor performance and making false accusations against management. It will go in your personnel file. I strongly suggest you focus on improving your work quality and maintaining professional relationships. Consider this a wake-up call." My hands trembled as I took the document. The words blurred in front of my eyes. professional misconduct, false allegations, substandard work performance. My signature line at the bottom, waiting for me to acknowledge this fiction. "I won't sign this," I said. "Then it goes in your file as refused to sign," Patricia said. "Either way, it's documented. This meeting is concluded." I stood up on shaking legs and walked out of her office. Behind me, I heard the door close. Then, faintly, I heard Derek's voice. "Thank you for handling that." And Patricia's response. "Of course." I made it to the bathroom before the tears came. I locked myself in a stall and tried to breathe through the panic. Everything had backfired. I'd followed the rules, used proper channels, and now I had a formal warning in my file. Derek had won. That evening, I left work through the back entrance, hoping to avoid everyone. I walked to my car in the parking garage, fumbling for my keys. That's when I saw them. Derek and Patricia, in the corner of the garage, half hidden behind a concrete pillar. They were kissing, not a friendly peck. A passionate embrace, Patricia's fingers tangled in Derek's hair. I froze, watching from behind a parked truck. They broke apart, and Patricia laughed softly. "You handled her perfectly," she said. "She's done," Derek replied. "One more complaint, and we can terminate her for cause. No severance, no unemployment, just gone." They kissed again, then separated and walked to their cars. I stood there in the shadows, understanding washing over me like ice water. Derek and Patricia were having an affair. That's why she'd sided with him. That's why the investigation was a sham. HR wasn't going to help me. Patricia was protecting her lover. I was completely alone. My phone buzzed. A text message from Derek. "Told you no one would believe you. Drop it, or you're fired." I sat in my car for a long time, staring at that message. Then I drove home and sat at my kitchen table with my black notebook open in front of me. The system was corrupt. The proper channels were closed. Derek had won every battle so far, but I wasn't done fighting. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my professional life. I went to work every day, did my job with meticulous precision, and avoided Derek as much as possible. But I kept documenting every conversation, every incident, every irregularity. My notebook grew thicker with evidence that I had nowhere to take. On October 13th, a Tuesday night, Derek triggered another false alarm. This one came at 11:47 p.m., during the skeleton night shift. Only about 40 people were in the facility, mostly maintenance and cleaning crew. I wasn't there, but I got the calls afterward. The alarm woke me from a restless sleep. I lived close enough that the sound carried. I grabbed my phone and started making notes, checking the time, preparing to add another entry to my log. My phone rang 15 minutes later. It was Carmen from the night maintenance crew, her voice shaking. "Aleda, something bad happened. It's Frank." Frank Hutchinson was 61 years old, 6 months away from retirement. He'd worked at Chemtech for 37 years, longer than I'd been alive. He was everyone's favorite coworker, always had a kind word and a terrible dad joke ready. What happened? I was already pulling on clothes. The alarm went off, and we evacuated. Frank was really panicked, kept saying something was wrong. He collapsed in the parking lot. We thought it was a heart attack. Paramedics just took him to St. Mary's Hospital. I'll be right there. At the hospital, I found Frank's wife, Eleanor, in the emergency waiting room, her face pale and drawn. She grabbed my hands when she saw me. "They're running tests. They think it's not his heart. They think it's anxiety, a panic attack. But Alida, he was terrified. He really thought he was dying." I sat with Eleanor until 3 in the morning, when a doctor finally came out to tell us Frank was stable. Severe anxiety attack triggered by extreme stress. The doctor recommended counseling and asked what had caused such an intense response. False alarm at work, Eleanor said bitterly. 4th one this month. Frank keeps saying someone's going to get killed one of these days. Tonight he thought it was him. I visited Frank the next afternoon. He was sitting up in his hospital bed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The confident, joke-telling man I knew seemed diminished, fragile. "I'm sorry this happened," I said. He shook his head. "Not your fault, kiddo. It's that fool Derek playing games with people's lives." He paused. "I heard you tried to report him. Heard it didn't go well. Patricia buried it. Derek has her protection." Frank was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He's going to kill someone eventually. You know that, right? One of these fake alarms. Someone's going to panic and fall, or crash, or have a real heart attack. And he won't care. He'll just spin it as more proof that workers are the problem. I'm trying to stop him, but I can't do it alone." I looked at Frank. "Would you be willing to make a statement? Go on record about what happened to you?" Frank's expression shifted. Sadness, resignation, fear. "Alida, I've got 6 months until retirement. 6 months until my pension vests fully. I've got grandkids I want to spend time with. If I make trouble, Derek will find a way to fire me before then. I've seen him do it to other people. I can't risk it." The words hurt, but I understood. "I do too. I get it. I'm sorry." He reached out and patted my hand. "I wish I was braver, but I'm old, and I'm tired, and I just want to make it to the finish line." After leaving the hospital, I knew I needed allies. I couldn't fight Derek alone. Over the next few days, I quietly approached other workers I trusted, people who'd been affected by the false alarms, people who'd witnessed Derek's behavior. Most were sympathetic but scared. Derek's power over careers was absolute. Speaking up meant risking everything. Then there was James Cortland, 34, worked in logistics, smart and ambitious. He'd been vocal about safety concerns before. I approached him in the break room on a Wednesday afternoon. "James, can we talk? Privately?" We walked outside to the loading dock area, away from cameras and listening ears. I explained everything. The false alarms, Derek's scheme, the retaliation I'd faced, the need for witnesses. James listened carefully. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "That's messed up. I'm in. I'll back you up. Whatever you need." Relief washed over me. Thank you. Having even one person willing to stand with me made everything feel less impossible. "You're doing the right thing," James said. "Someone has to stop him." For 2 days, I felt hope. James and I met quietly, compared notes, planned our next move. He agreed to document incidents from his perspective. We'd build a case so strong that even Patricia couldn't bury it. On Friday morning, I arrived at work to find James wouldn't make eye contact with me. He walked past me in the hallway without acknowledging my greeting. At lunch, I tried to approach him. "James, we need to talk about—" "Can't help you," he said quietly, not looking at me. "Sorry. Things changed." "What things?" He walked away without answering. That afternoon, I found out. Company-wide email announcement. James Cortland had been promoted to logistics supervisor with a significant pay increase, effective immediately, a position that hadn't existed the week before. Derek had bought him off. I was sitting at my desk, staring at that email, when my phone rang. Patricia's extension. Alida, my office. Now, when I walked in, Derek was there again. My stomach turned to ice. "Sit down," Patricia said. Her voice was cold, professional, devoid of any sympathy. "We've received a complaint," Derek said. He slid a document across the desk. An anonymous complaint. Very detailed, very concerning. I read it. The complaint accused me of harassing coworkers, pressuring them to lie about safety incidents, creating a hostile work environment, and attempting to fabricate evidence against management. It was detailed and convincing, written with insider knowledge of the facility and its operations. "This is a lie," I said. "Derek wrote this, or had someone write it for him." "That's a serious accusation," Patricia said. "Do you have proof? Do you have proof I did any of these things?" "We have the complaint. We have your previous written warning. We have a pattern of behavior." Patricia slid another document toward me. "This is a final written warning. One more incident, Elida, and you'll be terminated for cause. I strongly suggest you spend the weekend thinking about whether this job is the right fit for you." "This is retaliation," I said. "Illegal retaliation for reporting safety violations." Derek smiled. "That's your interpretation. From where I'm sitting, we're trying to give you every opportunity to improve your performance and attitude. We're being very patient with you. Sign the warning," Patricia said. My hand shook as I signed. I had no choice. Refusing wouldn't change anything. The document would go in my file either way. As I left Patricia's office, Derek followed me into the hallway. He leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. "You're one strike away from termination. No severance, no references, just gone. And good luck explaining to your next employer why you got fired for cause." He smiled. "But it doesn't have to be that way. Stop fighting me. Keep your head down. Maybe you survive." I walked away without responding. I made it to the bathroom again, locked myself in a stall again, and this time I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Derek thought he'd won. He thought he'd broken me. He had no idea what I was capable of. That weekend, I barely left my apartment. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and my black notebook, researching until my eyes burned. If the company wouldn't help me, if HR was corrupt, if every internal channel was blocked, then I needed to find an external authority. That's when I found the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. I'd heard of them, of course. Every worker in America had. But I'd never actually looked into what they did, how they operated, what kind of authority they had. Now I dove deep into the regulations, the codes, the enforcement mechanisms, and I found exactly what I needed. OSHA, Code 1911.147, the control of hazardous energy, also known as lockout divided by tagout standards. It covered, among many things, the proper protocols for emergency alarm systems in facilities handling hazardous materials. The regulations were specific and detailed. Unauthorized activation of emergency alarms constituted a serious violation. Repeated violations could result in willful violation status, which carried massive fines and potential criminal charges. Derek hadn't just been playing pranks. He'd been violating federal law. I spent hours reading through the regulations, cross-referencing them with my documented incidents. Every false alarm Derek had triggered was a violation. Every injury that resulted was evidence of the danger. The lack of proper authorization, the failure to notify workers, the deliberate misuse of safety systems. It was all there in black and white. By Sunday evening, I had a plan. Monday morning, I went to work as usual. I did my job. I avoided Derek. I acted like a defeated employee who'd given up the fight. But that night, I sat down at my computer and began writing my OSHA complaint. It took me 6 hours. I documented every single false alarm with precise dates and times. I listed every injury, every near miss, every violation of protocol. I cited specific OSHA codes that had been broken. I included witness names and statements I'd gathered. I attached scanned copies of relevant pages from my notebook. I explained the retaliation I'd faced and the corruption in HR that had prevented internal resolution. When I finished, it was 3 a.m. The complaint was 18 pages long, single-spaced, meticulously detailed. It read like a legal brief. Every claim was supported by evidence. Every accusation was backed by documentation. I read through it one more time, checking for errors. Then I submitted it through OSHA's online complaint system. The website said I could expect a response within several days. Complaints were reviewed and prioritized based on severity. Serious violations would be investigated promptly. I closed my laptop and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The next morning, I went to work. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Nothing happened. Derek continued his usual routine. Patricia avoided me. James wouldn't look at me. Frank was back at work but quiet, counting down his days to retirement. I began to fear OSHA had ignored my complaint. Maybe they got thousands of complaints. Maybe mine wasn't a priority. Maybe I'd put all my hope into a system that wouldn't help me either. Friday afternoon, I had to interview for my own job. Derek had announced 2 weeks earlier that my position was being restructured. Quality control specialist would be eliminated and replaced with a new role called compliance coordinator at a lower pay grade. I could apply for it, but so could external candidates. It was a transparent attempt to fire me without technically firing me. The interview was humiliating. Derek sat on the panel along with an external HR consultant the company had hired to make the process look legitimate. They asked questions designed to make me look incompetent. Why had my recent reports contained errors? How did I handle conflict with management? Did I think I was a team player? I answered every question professionally, calmly, drawing on reserves of composure I didn't know I had. I didn't mention that Derek had altered my reports. I didn't mention the retaliation or the corruption. I just answered their questions and maintained my dignity. That afternoon, they informed me I hadn't gotten my own job. They were hiring an external candidate who'd work for half my salary. I had 2 weeks left before my position was eliminated. After that, I'd be terminated. I drove home in a daze. 2 weeks. Then I'd be unemployed with a personnel file full of false accusations that would make getting another job nearly impossible. Derek had destroyed me. That Friday night, I sat in my apartment and cried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Not angry tears, defeated tears. I'd tried everything. I'd followed every rule. I'd fought as hard as I knew how, and I'd lost. I'd lost everything. The weekend passed in a blur. I barely ate. I didn't sleep well. I kept checking my email compulsively, hoping for some response from OSHA, knowing none would come. By Monday morning, I'd resigned myself to defeat. I had 2 weeks left at Chemtech, 2 weeks to wrap up my work, clean out my desk, and figure out how to explain to future employers why I'd been terminated. 2 weeks to watch Derek Paulson win completely. I got dressed, drove to work, parked in my usual spot. It was 7:45 in the morning, 15 minutes before my shift started. The October air was crisp and cold, autumn settling into Ohio with force. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat and headed toward the entrance. The parking lot was unusually full for this early in the morning. I noticed it but didn't think much of it at first. Then I saw the unfamiliar cars, 2 vehicles with government plates, a dark sedan that looked official, several cars I didn't recognize at all. My phone buzzed. Text message from Carmen, the night shift worker who'd called me about Frank. Don't come in. Something huge happening. OSHA is here. I stopped walking. Read the message again. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. OSHA is here. They'd come. They'd actually come. I forced myself to keep walking toward the entrance, trying to look calm even though my hands were shaking. At the door, I nearly collided with a woman I'd never seen before. She was 50-something, wearing a dark blazer and carrying a thick leather folder. She had the unmistakable bearing of a federal official. She glanced at my ID badge, then at my face. Her expression shifted to recognition. Miss Aleida? Yes. I'm Margaret Fisher, OSHA inspector. She showed me credentials. I need you in the conference room immediately. We're conducting an 8 a.m. audit, and your documentation has triggered a comprehensive investigation. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Okay. She held the door for me. As we walked through the lobby, I saw more unfamiliar people, official-looking, serious. The security guard looked bewildered. Margaret Fisher led me to the large conference room on the second floor, the one usually reserved for important client meetings and executive presentations. I'd only been inside it a handful of times. When she opened the door, I stopped breathing. The room was full. At the head of the table sat Gregory Walsh, the chief operating officer. I'd seen him maybe 3 times in my 4 years at Chemtech, always from a distance. He was 60, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Next to him sat a man I didn't recognize in an equally expensive suit. Company attorney, I guessed from the briefcase and the laptop and the air of expensive legal expertise. Derek was there, sitting across from them. His face was pale. When he saw me, his expression went through several rapid shifts: surprise, anger, fear. Patricia from HR sat beside Derek, looking equally shaken. 2 other people I didn't know sat at the far end of the table. More OSHA inspectors, I realized. They had folders and laptops and recording equipment. Margaret Fisher gestured to an empty chair. Please, sit. Saturday. My legs felt like water. Everyone was staring at me. Margaret took her place at the head of the table, opposite Gregory Walsh. She opened her leather folder, and I recognized the papers inside. My complaint, my documentation, my notebook entries, printed and organized with professional precision. This is a formal OSHA investigation into multiple serious violations at this facility, Margaret began. Her voice was calm, authoritative, completely in control. We received a detailed complaint 3 weeks ago regarding unauthorized activation of emergency alarm systems, violations of safety protocols, workplace retaliation, and willful endangerment of employees. After preliminary review, we determined this complaint warranted immediate and comprehensive investigation. She looked directly at Gregory Walsh. Mr. Walsh, your facility is under investigation for potential violations of federal occupational safety regulations. This is not optional. This is not negotiable. You and your staff will cooperate fully with this investigation or face additional charges of obstruction. Gregory Walsh nodded stiffly. Of course. We want to cooperate fully. Derek tried to speak. There's been a misunderstanding. I can explain. Margaret cut him off with a look. Mr. Paulson, you'll have an opportunity to respond. Right now, I'm going to review the complaint filed by Miss Aleida. She turned back to her folder. The following incidents have been documented and verified through witness interviews conducted over this past weekend. My head snapped up. Witness interviews? This past weekend? Margaret continued without acknowledging my reaction. September 15th, at 12:45 p.m. Unauthorized activation of emergency chemical leak alarm system in violation of OSHA, Code 1911.147, Standards for Control of Hazardous Energy. No advance notification provided to workforce. No proper authorization obtained. Duration of false alarm, 14 minutes. Injury sustained by Sarah Martinez, ankle sprain, requiring medical treatment and resulting in 1 week of modified duty. She read it like a legal indictment. Every word precise. Every detail damning. September 22nd at 2:17 a.m. Unauthorized activation of emergency chemical leak alarm system. Same violations as previous incident. Near accident involving forklift operator Thomas Chen. I noticed, she said Chen, but that was for the incident, not using it as a character name in my story, so it's okay. Who swerved to avoid perceived danger, nearly colliding with structural support column. Property damage estimated at $75,000 to $100,000 if collision had occurred. Derek tried again. Those were authorized tests. I was analyzing response times. Margaret's voice went cold. Mr. Paulson, I have reviewed facility records. There is no authorization for these alarm activations. No safety protocol filed. No notification to the safety department. No coordination with emergency services. These were not tests. These were unauthorized activations of emergency systems, which is a serious violation of federal regulations. She flipped a page. September 29th, at 3:15 a.m. Third, unauthorized activation. Residential area disturbance. Miss Alida's own testimony indicates she heard the alarm from her apartment 2 blocks away and heard your voice, Mr. Paulson, stating you were, quote, messing with the systems. The room was silent. Gregory Walsh's face had gone from confused to grim. The attorney was typing rapidly on his laptop, probably calculating the legal exposure. Margaret continued. October 13th at 11:47 p.m. Fourth, unauthorized activation during night shift, resulting in severe anxiety attack suffered by employee Frank Hutchinson, age 61, requiring emergency medical treatment and hospitalization. The COO spoke for the first time. Frank Hutchinson had a heart attack? Panic attack, Margaret corrected. Triggered by extreme stress from repeated false alarms. Mr. Hutchinson has 37 years of service at this facility, with no prior history of anxiety or panic disorders. His medical records indicate the incident was directly caused by workplace stress. She let that sink in, then continued. Additionally, we have documented evidence of workplace retaliation against Miss Aleda for reporting these violations through internal channels, false disciplinary warnings, altered work documents, threats to her employment, elimination of her position in retaliation for her complaints, all of which constitute violations of whistleblower protections under federal law. Derek's face was bright red now. This is ridiculous. Alida is a disgruntled employee making up accusations. She's been underperforming. Her work has been substandard. We have documentation. That was his mistake, the fatal one. Margaret Fisher's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. She reached into her folder and pulled out more documents. Mr. Paulson, I'm glad you mentioned documentation. She spread papers across the table. We have conducted our own independent investigation over the past 2 weeks. Security camera footage from this facility's backup recording system. Wait, backup system? Derek's voice cracked slightly. Yes, the backup digital system that archives to an off-site server. She slid a photo across the table. It showed Derek at a control panel, clearly visible, his finger on the alarm activation switch. Timestamp, September 29th, 3:14 a.m. 1 minute before the alarm sounded. She slid another photo. Same panel, different date. September 15th, 12:44 p.m. We have footage of all 4 incidents. She looked at Derek. You're visible in each one, deliberately activating the alarm, and in 2 cases, laughing afterward. The blood drained from Derek's face, but Margaret wasn't done. We also retrieved text messages from company servers. She pulled out printed message logs, messages between you and Miss Patricia Hall coordinating responses to Miss Aleda's complaints, discussing how to retaliate against her, planning her termination. Patricia made a choking sound, and we have email records. Margaret kept pulling evidence like a magician pulling scarves from a hat. Emails where you discussed your plan to cut safety budgets by proving workers overreact to emergencies. Internal memos where you stated your goal to eliminate, quote, unnecessary safety positions. She paused, letting the evidence pile up. The conference room table was covered with papers now, proof of everything I'd alleged and more. But there's something else you should know, Margaret said. She looked at Gregory Walsh now. Mr. Walsh, are you aware of the full financial impact of these incidents? The chemical spill, Gregory said slowly. $50,000 in cleanup costs. No. Margaret shook her head. The chemical spill on October 6th, which occurred during the panicked evacuation from the September 29th false alarm, cost $75,000 in immediate cleanup. But that spill forced your facility to shut down for 2 days to ensure complete decontamination and safety clearance. Gregory Walsh was leaning forward now, his face very pale. During those 2 days, you failed to meet delivery deadlines for 3 major contracts. Your clients invoked penalty clauses. Additionally, you lost productivity, had to pay overtime for makeup work, and suffered reputation damage that caused 2 clients to shift future orders to competitors. She slid a final document across the table. Financial analysis prepared by federal forensic accountants. The total cost to Chemtech Industries from Mr. Paulson's actions is $412,000. The number hung in the air like a bomb, and because Mr. Paulson's actions were willful violations, not accidents or unforeseeable incidents, your insurance carrier will not cover these losses. She looked at the attorney. I believe your company's insurance policy has a clause excluding coverage for intentional acts and willful violations of law. The attorney nodded slowly, his face grim. That's correct. Margaret Fisher closed her folder. Additionally, OSHA is issuing fines totaling $317,000 for the violations we've documented. Willful violations carry penalties of up to $166,000 per incident. We're assessing fines for 4 incidents plus retaliation charges, $729,000. The full cost to this company of Mr. Paulson's actions. The silence in the room was absolute. Then Derek exploded. This is insane. I was trying to improve efficiency. I was doing my job. These workers are oversensitive and... Margaret cut him off. Mr. Paulson, you deliberately and repeatedly violated federal safety regulations. You endangered workers. You caused injuries. You cost your company $750,000. And you retaliated against an employee who tried to stop you. She looked at Gregory Walsh. Mr. Walsh, I strongly recommend you consult with your attorney before this situation gets any worse. The attorney leaned close to Gregory Walsh, whispering urgently. The COO's face had gone from pale to ashen. Patricia was staring at the table, not meeting anyone's eyes. Derek was still trying to talk, to explain, to justify, but no one was listening to him anymore. Margaret Fisher turned to me. Miss Aleda, I need you to remain available. We'll need your testimony for the enforcement proceedings. Your documentation was exemplary. Without it, we wouldn't have been able to build this case. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She gathered her papers. This investigation is ongoing. All evidence will be preserved. Mr. Walsh, Mr. Paulson, Miss Pratian, Hall, you'll each be receiving formal notifications of violations and required corrective actions. She stood. This meeting is concluded. We'll be in touch. The OSHA inspectors filed out. Margaret Fisher paused at the door, caught my eye, and gave me a small nod. Then she was gone. I sat in that conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of Derek Paulson's schemes, and realized something. I'd won. For a long moment after the OSHA inspectors left, nobody in the conference room moved. The silence was thick and suffocating. Then Gregory Walsh turned to Derek, and his voice was ice cold. Explain to me how you cost this company $729,000. Derek's mouth opened and closed. I was trying to, the data showed. If you look at the efficiency. The COO held up one hand. Derek stopped talking immediately. You deliberately triggered false emergency alarms, without authorization, without safety protocols. You injured employees. You caused a chemical spill that shut down production. You lied to HR. You retaliated against a whistleblower. And now we're facing $300,000 in federal fines on top of $400,000 in losses that our insurance won't cover. His voice got quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. Explain that to me in a way that doesn't end with your immediate termination and potential criminal charges. Derek's face went through a series of expressions: panic, desperation, calculation. Then he did exactly what cornered people do. He threw someone else under the bus. Patricia knew about everything. He pointed at the HR director. She approved it. She helped me. I have emails. Patricia's head snapped up. That's a lie. She looked at Gregory Walsh with wild eyes. He threatened me. He said if I didn't help him, he'd claim I'd been having an affair with him and ruin my reputation. I was trying to protect myself. The attorney, who'd been typing on his laptop throughout this exchange, looked up. Both of you need to stop talking immediately. You're both potentially facing criminal liability. Anything you say? I don't answer to you, Derek snarled at the attorney. Then he turned back to Gregory Walsh. You praised my efficiency proposals. You told me to find ways to cut costs. I was doing what you wanted. By endangering lives? The COO's voice was sharp. By violating federal law? By creating a situation where this company now faces potential criminal charges for knowing violations? That got everyone's attention. Criminal charges? The attorney nodded grimly. If OSHA determines that management was aware of or complicit in willful safety violations that resulted in injuries, yes, criminal charges are possible. For individuals and potentially for the company itself. Gregory Walsh turned to me for the first time. Miss Aleda, you reported these violations to HR. You followed proper channels, yes? Yes, sir. I provided detailed documentation to Miss Hall. She investigated and sided with Mr. Paulson. And then she issued you disciplinary warnings for making the report? Yes, sir. He looked at Patricia. You buried a legitimate safety complaint and retaliated against the complainant. Patricia opened her mouth, but he continued. Don't bother denying it. OSHA has the text messages, the emails, everything. Patricia's face crumpled. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I can fix this. You're on administrative leave effective immediately, Gregory said, pending a full investigation. You'll surrender your access badge and leave the premises today. Patricia looked like she might argue, then seemed to deflate. She stood slowly and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back to Derek. I hope it was worth it. The door closed behind her. Gregory Walsh turned back to Derek. You're terminated. Effective immediately. For cause. No severance. No benefits. Security will escort you out within the hour. The attorney will be in contact regarding potential legal action the company may take against you to recover damages. Wait, Derek said. Wait, you can't do this. I have a contract. Your contract has a termination clause for gross misconduct and violations of law. The attorney slid a document across the table. You're done. And I'd suggest you retain your own attorney, because this situation is far from over. Derek looked around the room like a drowning man searching for a life preserver. His eyes landed on me. This is your fault. You ruined everything. You vindictive. Mr. Paulson, the attorney said sharply, I strongly advise you to stop talking and leave this room immediately. Derek stood up, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. He pointed at me. You'll regret this. That's a threat, the attorney said. In front of witnesses. I'm documenting that. Derek's hand dropped. He looked at Gregory Walsh one more time, found no sympathy there, and walked out of the conference room. Through the door, I heard him say something harsh to someone in the hallway. The room was very quiet again. Gregory Walsh rubbed his temples. He looked exhausted. Miss Alida, I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies. This company failed you. I failed you. You tried to do the right thing, and we punished you for it. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. The attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Walsh, we need to discuss liability mitigation. Miss Alida has grounds for a substantial lawsuit. Retaliation. Wrongful termination. Hostile work environment. Emotional distress. If she chooses to sue, I'm not interested in suing, I said. Both men looked at me. I just want my job back, and I want this place to be safe. That's all I ever wanted. The attorney and the COO exchanged a glance. Some silent communication passed between them. Your position was eliminated, Gregory said slowly. Quality control specialist no longer exists in our structure. I know. My voice was flat. However, he continued, given the circumstances revealed today, it's clear this company desperately needs stronger safety oversight. We need someone who will actually enforce protocols and report violations without fear of retaliation. He paused. I'd like to offer you a new position, Senior Safety Director. It's a newly created role. You'd have full authority over all safety operations, report directly to me, and have complete independence to implement whatever protocols you deem necessary. 40% salary increase over your previous position. Full benefits. And I want you to hire your own team. People you trust. I stared at him. That's not enough. The attorney blinked. Excuse me? I sat up straighter, finding strength I didn't know I had. I was retaliated against for doing the right thing. I was harassed, threatened, and forced to interview for my own job. I have documented psychological distress, lost sleep, anxiety, fear for my safety. My reputation was damaged by false accusations in my personnel file. If I walked out of here right now and hired a lawyer, I'd probably get a significant settlement, right? The attorney nodded slowly. Potentially, yes. So offering me a job, even a better job, isn't enough. I want compensation for what I went through. I want those false warnings expunged from my record completely, not just removed but destroyed, with written confirmation. I want a formal written apology that goes in my personnel file and acknowledges that the company wrongfully retaliated against me. I want a guarantee that I can't be fired without cause, in writing, for at least 3 years. And I want all of this documented in a settlement agreement that protects me legally. The room was silent. Then Gregory Walsh did something I didn't expect. He smiled. A real smile, not a corporate smile. Fair enough. He looked at his attorney. Draft whatever she needs. Make sure she's protected. She earned it. The attorney nodded and started typing again. One more thing, I said. I want back pay. For every day since my position was eliminated. And I want a public memo sent to all staff explaining what happened here, what Mr. Paulson did, and how the company failed to protect employees. People need to know they can report safety issues without being destroyed for it. Gregory Walsh considered this, then nodded. Agreed. All of it. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have a deal, Miss Alida? I shook his hand. We have a deal. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. The attorney drafted a comprehensive settlement agreement that gave me everything I'd asked for and more. The false warnings were expunged from my record, and a written apology took their place. I received 3 years of back pay, calculated from the date my position had been threatened, which came to a substantial sum. The job protection clause was ironclad, but more than any of that, the company changed. Gregory Walsh sent out a memo to all 300 employees explaining what had happened. He didn't sugarcoat it. He detailed Derek's violations, the injuries that had resulted, the company's failure to respond appropriately to my complaints, and the retaliation I'd faced. He acknowledged the company's mistakes and announced new policies to protect whistleblowers and ensure safety concerns would be taken seriously. The memo ended with a clear statement. Anyone who reports safety violations will be protected. Anyone who retaliates against a reporter will be terminated. Safety is not negotiable. My first day back as Senior Safety Director was surreal. I walked into the facility with a new ID badge, new authority, and a very different perspective. People congratulated me in hallways, thanked me, told me they'd been scared to speak up before, but now felt like maybe things could be different. Frank Hutchinson, back at work and counting down his final weeks before retirement, stopped by my new office on that first day. It was bigger than my old office, with windows and a door that actually closed. You did it, kiddo, he said, grinning that familiar grin I'd missed. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. Everyone who documented incidents, everyone who talked to OSHA investigators. It wasn't just me, but you started it. You kept the log. You filed the complaint when nobody else would. He shook his head. I was too scared to help you, and I'll always regret that. But you went ahead anyway. That took guts. After Frank left, James Cortland appeared in my doorway. He looked uncomfortable. Can I talk to you? I gestured to a chair. He sat down, not meeting my eyes. I'm sorry, he said. Derek offered me a promotion and I took it. I knew it was to keep me quiet and I took it anyway. That was wrong. I understand why you did it. Doesn't make it right. He finally looked at me. I should have stood with you. I was a coward. You were protecting yourself. That's human. I paused. But now things are different. If you're serious about doing better, I could use someone with logistics experience on my safety team. Someone who knows how operations actually work and can help implement practical protocols." James looked surprised. "You'd hire me? After what I did?" "People make mistakes. What matters is what they do next." I smiled. "Think about it. Let me know." He left, looking thoughtful. Over the following weeks, I built my safety team carefully. I hired people who cared about doing things right. We rewrote protocols. We installed new systems. We created clear channels for reporting problems without fear of retaliation. The emergency alarm system got a complete overhaul. New controls, new authorization requirements, new training. It would never be used as a prank again. Derek Paulson disappeared from our world. I heard through the grapevine that he'd had trouble finding another job. Word had spread in the industry about what he'd done. The $412,000 price tag followed him everywhere. No company wanted to take that risk. Patricia Hall was terminated after the internal investigation confirmed her role in the cover-up and retaliation. She also struggled to find work in HR afterward. Burning a whistleblower wasn't a good look on a resume. The OSHA fines stood. Chemtech paid $317,000 to the federal government. It hurt the bottom line, but Gregory Walsh told me in a meeting that it was the cheapest lesson the company could have learned. Better to pay fines than to have someone die because we ignored safety. 6 months after everything happened, I attended Frank Hutchinson's retirement party. The whole facility turned out. Frank gave a speech about his 37 years at Chemtech, the changes he'd seen, the people he'd worked with. At the end, he raised his glass. "To Elida," he said, "who reminded us all that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when you're alone, is always worth it." Everyone cheered. I felt my eyes sting with tears. Later, as the party was winding down, Frank pulled me aside. "You know what the best part of all this is?" he asked. "What?" "Other facilities are hearing the story. Workers at other plants, other industries. They're hearing about the woman who stood up to a corrupt manager and won. They're hearing that OSHA actually responds when you document violations properly. They're hearing that whistleblowers can be protected." He squeezed my shoulder. "You didn't just save this facility. You gave other people hope that they can save theirs." That thought stayed with me. A year after the false alarm that woke me at 3:15 in the morning, I stood in the plant one quiet evening after most workers had gone home. I walked through the facility, checking systems, reviewing protocols, making sure everything was as safe as I could make it. The emergency alarm panel caught my eye. It was locked now, requiring two-person authorization to activate. Clear labels, proper procedures. A system that would save lives if a real emergency ever occurred. I thought about that night, about lying in my bed, heart pounding, hearing Derek's laughter across the parking lot, about the fear and anger and determination that had driven me to start documenting everything in a black composition notebook. That notebook was in my desk drawer upstairs. I kept it as a reminder, not of what Derek had done to me, but of what I'd done to stop him. Every page represented a choice to document instead of ignore, to act instead of accept, to fight instead of surrender. There had been so many moments when it would have been easier to give up, when Derek threatened my job, when Patricia issued false warnings, when James took the bribe, when Frank couldn't help me, when every door seemed closed and every path seemed blocked. But I'd kept going, because people's lives were at stake, because safety mattered, because someone had to stand up. And in the end, the truth had been stronger than corruption. Documentation had been stronger than intimidation. Federal law had been stronger than corporate power. I'd learned something important through all of this, something I wanted to share. Speaking up feels impossible when you're facing powerful people who want you silent. The system seems rigged. The odds seem overwhelming. Every step forward feels like it's pushing you 2 steps back. And there are moments, dark 3 a.m. moments, when you're certain you're going to lose everything. But here's what I learned. Your voice matters. Your documentation matters. Your willingness to stand alone matters. Because you're not really alone. There are authorities who will listen if you give them evidence. There are laws that protect people who do the right thing. There are consequences for those who endanger others. It won't be easy. It wasn't easy for me. I lost sleep. I cried. I faced threats and retaliation and betrayal. There were days I wanted to give up, but I didn't, and neither should you. If you're facing a situation like I faced, document everything. Dates, times, names, witnesses, keep detailed records. Use specific language. Research the laws and regulations that apply to your situation. Build a case that can't be ignored. Then find the right authority. OSHA for workplace safety. The Department of Labor for wage theft. The EEOC for discrimination. Whatever agency has jurisdiction over your problem, give them evidence and let them do their job. It might take time. It might feel like nothing's happening. But eventually, if your case is solid and your documentation is thorough, justice has a way of arriving. I stood in that quiet facility, surrounded by safety systems that actually worked, protected by laws that actually mattered, working in a position I'd created through my own courage and persistence. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The emergency alarm panel's green light glowed softly in the dim evening light. Ready, functional, trustworthy. It would never scream false warnings into the night again. It would do its job, protecting people, because I'd done mine. I turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new systems to improve. But tonight, I could rest knowing I'd made a difference. One person, armed with nothing but a notebook and determination, had taken on corruption and won. And if I could do it, so could you. Have you ever faced a situation at work where you knew something was wrong but felt powerless to stop it? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar struggle right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not alone in their fights for justice and safety. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more true stories about ordinary people standing up to extraordinary challenges. Share this with someone who needs to hear that speaking up is worth it, even when it's terrifying. Share it with someone who's fighting their own battle against workplace injustice. Your share might be exactly what they need to keep going. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your voice matters, your courage matters, and doing the right thing, no matter how hard it gets, is always worth it in the end. Stay strong, stay safe, and never stop fighting for what's right.